Hi guys, I'm Mercedes from the channel Mercy's Bookish Musings, and I'm here today to talk to you guys about short story collections. I love short story collections and I know that not everyone else does, so I want to convince you that you should be giving them more of a chance. So I think short story collections do something that novels can't, and that is offer the intensity of a story in a short space of time. So sometimes if you have really detailed, intense character development with lots of sort of introspective thought, or you have really lyrical, detailed writing, or if you have really weird and wacky stories, then if you put those in a novel and expect people to read them for, several hundred pages, then those things I don't think can always be maintained for a novel-length story. However, they work perfectly in short story form. So I have quite a few short story collections here to recommend to you guys, and hopefully even if you're into short story collections and you have been picking some up, good, then you can still find some recommendations in these ones I'm going to chat about, and of course you can all add more recommendations down below to convince other people to pick them up. So my first foray into short story collections was the original fairy tales. I've always had lots of the original fairy tales on my shelves, and one I've been enjoying recently is this gorgeous little book. I love dinky books, it's like so cute. So this is English Fairy Tales by F.A. Steele. This is actually in the Macmillan Collector's Library edition, which means that there is several other collections of sort of fairy tales and mythology they have in these editions, which look lovely together. So they all have these gold foiling and then the pale blue and a pale blue ribbon. And I love having these because you can reference back to the originals, and so when you come across a sort of contemporary retelling or perhaps just the nod to the originals, you can go back and sort of make sure you understand what the original story was. So I think that's a great reason for having lots of fairy tales on your bookshelves. So there's that one. Then the next one I personally think that a reason why lots of people struggle with short story collections is because they feel that the short stories aren't linked to one another and there's no unifying theme, and that, I hear lots of people say, I just don't really get how they were all linked together, like what the point was. So if you're worried about that, then I'd recommend picking up a linked collection. There's actually lots of linked collections out there. There's some sort of story collections that are linked by location, so all the stories take place in the same village or town. Or there's some sort of stories where they're all linked by a certain theme or certain people. This collection I'm going to talk about is linked by a certain theme. So the collection I'm talking about is What Is Not Yours by Helen Oyeyemi. Helen Oyeyemi is very well known for writing amazing sort of fairy tale retellings. This is so far her only short story collection, and all of these short stories are linked together by the theme of keys. So once you've read the whole collection, you can sort of look back and figure out how all the stories were sort of interwound into one another, and all the different, keys that kept popping up. This is gorgeously published. I've got the original hardback, which has a naked spine. This is the only book I own like this, and I love it because I think, maybe this is just me, but that makes me feel like it's one of those sort of big weighty tomes that you see like wizards reading, because it just completely opens up. So I love it, and obviously the contents are beautiful as well, but equally the cover is very, very pretty. So there's that one. Then I have a sort of weird and wacky collection to recommend to you guys that is one of my favourite sort of magical realism short story collections, and that is At the Mouth of the River of Bees by Kaj Johnson. Now all these stories are weird in some way, but some are weirder than others. So some are sci-fi, some are fantasy, some are realist but a bit weird, some are magical realist. There's just a real mixture. Lots of them have animals in, and quite a few of them are inspired by original fairy tales. What I particularly like about this collection is they're not all inspired by the fairy tales that we're more familiar with, so they're not all from like Western countries. So lots of the stories are inspired by Japanese folklore and countries around Japan. So this is a beautiful collection. She has a really lyrical writing style, and I'm pretty sure you could find a story for anyone to enjoy in this collection because it is such a mixture of writing styles, so I'd highly recommend this one. Then we have Swimmer Among the Stars by Kanishk Tharoor. Now this collection is a blend of realist and magical stories, so I'm going to tell you about one of my favourite stories from each of those types. So my favourite sort of magical story focuses on a spaceship, and it is the story of the Earth's decline. And so what's happened is that a representative from each country has been sent to this spaceship to represent their country for the United Nations. And we're watching this spaceship as they lose all their resources and watch the Earth be like obliterated. And it's this sort of quiet, very sad story as these countries sort of converse with one another as they watch the demise of their home. And it's beautiful, very weird, but I really, really loved it. One of the other stories I adored is called Portrait with Coalfire, and it's about a family who are photographed and used for a National Geographic article. And they feel like they've been misrepresented, so they contact the journalist via Skype and they use a translator, and you get the Skype transcript, and the translator sometimes mistranslates because he feels like the journalist is being rude to the man in the portrait. And it's such a sad story. It made me think so much, and I wish everybody could read it, so I highly recommend that collection. The next collection is also a mixture of realist and magical realism, and that is By Light We Knew Our Names by Valente. Now this is a phenomenal collection. It's very lyrically written, it's inspired by, you know, various folklore, but also some of the stories are more to do with animals, and some of them are very focused on women. There's some amazing stories in this collection. A story I particularly love is about a group of young girls. As the story unfolds, they sort of learn the secrets of their bodies and what their bodies can do. It's a beautiful story. And then one of the realist stories that I loved is about a little girl whose mum has just left her, and so her dad is raising her as a single parent, and she's begun to have an imaginary friend that she keeps in a jam jar. And then she's told at school there is a pink dolphin trapped in the local cove, and she gets sort of obsessed with this dolphin and what she can do to help, and it's just such a sad and touching story. Then lastly, I've got two realist collections to recommend to you guys, and these are both excellent. I'd highly recommend both of them. So this is Foreign Soil by Maxine Beneba. This is so amazing. Maxine Beneba is an Australian author. She's a person of colour, and her parents emigrated out to Australia before she was born. And so she grew up in Australia at a time of real political turmoil, when she was one of the very few black people living in her community. And that is really represented in this short story collection. So this collection tells stories of people from all over the world, but a unifying theme of this short story collection is this feeling of race and the importance of race in certain parts of the world, and the way people are treated because of things such as their race or their sexual preference or their mental health, all these different things. This is a really poignant collection. It's quite upsetting, but at the same time her writing style is quite familiar and easy to read, and I think everybody should read this collection. It's a real beauty. So that's Foreign Soil. And then lastly we have How to Breathe Underwater by Julie Orringer. This is a collection of stories all about young girls. So they're all either teens, or some of them are as young as 5 years old, and it's a beautiful short story collection. It's one I think that most people could connect to, even though it's focused on girls. I think the way the stories focus on childhood and adolescence and the decisions children and teens can make and how harmful those decisions can be, I think most people could connect to. Some of these stories are quite upsetting and harrowing, but I felt these stories touched me deeply, and I felt such a connection to them, and I felt so real and so raw and honest. So I'd highly recommend this collection as well. So I hope I've convinced you to pick a short story collection up. Do let me know down below which one you like the sound of the most, and also do feel free to put some recommendations down below if you enjoy short story collections and you'd like other people to pick them up as well. Thanks for watching. Bye!